Welcome, everyone, to another episode of After School with the Admins. I'm your host, Marco Torillo, and I'm here with my co-host,
Des Caldwell. Welcome, everyone. We are really excited. We've got an amazing group of educators from Colorado. Marco, go ahead and take it away.
Sure. We are right now joined by Mountain Vista Community School. It's a K-8 school in Colorado. We're joined by their admin team and one of their literacy coaches who are going to talk to us about many of the structures and systems they've put in place to help support students and staff to excel in their areas. So I'd like to first start by introducing each of the individuals. We have Nicole Paxton. We also have Sean Lusky. We have Naomi Grayfox. And we have Leroy James. Welcome, everybody. Thank you guys so much for joining us today on After School of the Admins. We always like to start with a simple question of just how you got to where you are today in education. What made you choose to be an educator and to got you to the point where you are now, an administrator or a literacy coach as a leader in your school? So first, Nicole, would you mind telling us a little bit about that?
Sure. So I was raised with my mom, who always told me that education is the greatest equalizer. And for me, that has held true for like my entire life. So while I was going through college and getting my bachelor's, I got a great opportunity to do an internship to be a teacher. And I realized in that moment, like, oh my gosh, I love this so much. But I was in the wrong degree program. And so I went on a non-traditional path supported by an alternative licensure program. And I'm so thankful that I did. I taught high school math for about a decade and was given an opportunity then to realize, like, through being a department chair and those types of things, that I really loved leadership and being able to impact adult learning. And so I got my master's degree. I went on to get my doctoral degree in educational leadership, and I became an assistant principal. I was blessed with the opportunity to apply and was named the Colorado Assistant Principal of the Year for middle schools in 2025. And through that fantastic experience, I have then spent the last 11 years as an assistant principal in the Harrison School District 2 and the last 6 here at Mountain Vista. And this year I was just asked to step into the role of a principal, and it's been fantastic. Our Board of Education just won the Urban School Leadership Award for, it's called the CUBE Award. Our former principal that was in this building was an elementary principal of the year. And so I feel like I'm following great footsteps. Our superintendent was also named Superintendent of the Year 2 years ago for the state of Colorado. So when I think about great leadership, I'm working on an amazing, amazing team. And so as I've stepped into this new role as principal this year, I want to continue to give great opportunities to our staff, to our students, to drive student voice, to ensure we have lots of great community partnerships. And then it's also about me leading outside of this building. And so I serve on the board for the Colorado Association of Middle Level Educators. And I also serve on the board for the National Association of Secondary School Principals, because I believe in being an advocate for educators across not only the state, but also the nation. And so today is an awesome day. We get to spend some time hanging out with you guys.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much. Sean, how about you?
So kind of a similar story, but a little bit different. I actually started as a marketing major in college and did not want to lie to people my whole life to try to sell a product. So I was playing NHL 06 with my roommate one night, and he was like, you should probably go into education. You love helping people, and you always want to do stuff like that, so you should try it. Went to the admissions office and talked with my counselor, and she let me know that none of my transfer credits would apply because it's a completely different field. And I said, I don't care. I want to do it anyway. So went into the education program, graduated after 7.5 years of college. A lot of people go to college for 8 years. They're usually doctors. But loved every minute of it. Went for music education. So I started my career in Colorado here, 2012-13 school year as a music teacher. Did that for a few years before wanting to try to pass the Praxis, which is our assessment system, to get my gen ed certification. Moved into the gen ed classroom and then wanted to specialize in math because I love puzzles and the way numbers are going. So went into a math program and then eventually had a practice interview for possible future administration positions. I was in a program at the time. And our former principal was one of the mock interviewers at that time. Let me know about a position, about an upcoming math coaching position at Mountain Vista, and I jumped at the opportunity. And here we are.
That's great. I love hearing the fact that both of you didn't traditionally want to become educators. I'm wondering if that's going to continue down the line here, because I can tell you for Des and I, in many of the episodes we've had, including ourselves, we're never wanting to be educators in the beginning, and somehow we found our way into it. And I always say, I feel like it's a calling. It's something that you don't realize you're meant to be in. It just kind of keeps finding its way back into your life to let you know, like, this is what you're meant to do. And and the right people are the ones that excel in it and keep moving forward. And that's perfectly great to me. And I think about that when I hear these kind of stories, and it's always just uplifting to hear that there's so many individuals who said, I wanted to do something else, but this kept coming about. And it was just what needed to happen. And that's why I think when you hear about it, it is a calling for many individuals. Naomi, how about you?
All right, well, I'm going to throw off the balance here just a little bit now that you got done.
Get what I just said. All right, good.
Yeah, just mix it. Actually, I started as a nanny for a couple kids when I was in high school. Thought that I could really make a difference, and so pursued education from there. I started at a 4-year degree university, got my undergrad, and then decided to keep going. So I continued on my path of pursuing my master's in leadership and educational administration. And I thought I was going to go ahead and go into administration from there. But my path kind of took a different turn into more of the literacy approach and making sure that kids are on track for reading. So I started off as a 4th grade teacher, then quickly shifted into the literacy coach and interventionist role. And I found out that I absolutely love being an interventionist, helping kids close reading gaps and making sure that they were prepared for the next grade level and beyond. My philosophy is that we as educators have the power to change the trajectory of a child's life. And so with reading as my focus, I just really made sure that kids were on track and that we could go ahead and close those gaps for students. And from there, of course, I moved into the literacy coach role where I could create a bigger impact on students and teachers. So for me, stepping into this role has been very empowering in the fact that I'm able to go ahead and cast a wider net for teachers and students and really make that change.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. And Leroy, how about you?
Yes, so for me, it started very early. Both of my parents are educators, so my dad was an administrator, my mom was child care service provider, and early on in my life, I've just been around just educators and seeing how beneficial and how meaningful they are to the community. My mom within child care services supported low-income residents of our area, and I just saw the impact that she had on the community and all the things that she instilled in those students and also instilled in myself and my brother, along with my dad as an administrator. He was an administrator for many, many, many years, and he has definitely both been an influence on me and on my path to education. And I concluded early on, this is what I want to do. So went to college, went to the Teachers College in Henderson State University in Arkansas. So I am a Southerner, originally from Texas, and making my way here via Louisiana. So I was working at a residential high school in Louisiana for a good bit, working as an assistant director there. Great times because, like I said, residential, the students are staying there. They are high excelling students, but it's definitely a party when you have 100 teenage boys in the dorm and they get out of class and they just want to always have some fun. Things like 14, 15-year-olds. So definitely had a great time learning so much from that experience. And then transitioning, again, took a really alternate route. Worked in higher education for some years as well. And then I really figured I really want to do something that's more meaningful to me. Higher ed was awesome, but I really wanted to get back into the classroom and really make a true impact. So I went back to teaching, taught social studies for a bit, and got the opportunity 2 years ago to become an administrator. And this is actually my first year here at Mountain Vista. And I'm just super excited for this opportunity. Just being here these few months, I noticed that this is a really great school to be at, with some really great leaders and great instructors and educators, and overall just great students. So I'm really eager to learn as much as I can from the team we have here and also from everyone at the school. And I'm looking forward to this journey and where it's going to take me.
That's great. Thank you so much. What is, if you wouldn't mind, if you can just tell the audience your demographic, kind of like your makeup of your school. So I know it's a K through 8 school. Can you just give us a little background of that?
Sure. We have about 600 students, 85% minority, about 81% are free and reduced lunch, making us a Title I school. We have about a little over 20% of our population has special education services. About 30% of our population has English language supports, and we have about 5 or 6% is gifted. And then we've got a robust programs for athletics and activities. And then like you said, we're a K-8. Am I missing anything? Yeah.
No.
Oh. Yeah.
That
So
was impressive to have.
we're an urban school, so
It's impressive that you're able to just give all that information, like no notes, just off the top of your head.
I'm not gonna lie, you went deeper than I thought you were gonna go with that too. I was like, okay, she's got it ready to go.
we should know the populations we serve, right?
But I think that's a sign, though, I think, of yourself and your leadership with your group, that you know your school. You can actually give that information. You can say it right away. You know what are the pieces of it to kind of start to work on, or even with. You can say what makes your school great too, because you started saying off the programs with it. All I asked for was just tell me a little bit about that side, but you were great on being able to show both. You know what makes up your school on top of what are the great things your school is able to do, which again goes back to that leadership model of knowing your school, knowing your people, knowing your community. Hearing that and kind of knowing about some of the work. One of the big things I know that you talked about before when we first spoke was about the cognitive shift. Okay. Would you be able to go a little bit into understanding of that, how that came about for your school and what that means for you?
Yes. So kind of what you alluded to, we're a very data-driven school, and it's helping us make decisions about the direction of our building. Oftentimes we'll look at whether it's student-based data or staff-based data, and we'll have to think about like how we're providing services or how we're providing supports and interventions. We are a performance school. It's called the School Performance Framework. It's kind of like a report card of sorts on how schools in Colorado are doing. And we noticed that we are struggling a little bit in for example, math. And so as we look at data, both staff and student based, we're trying to figure out as a team, like, what is it that we're doing? We have these amazing systems in place, whether that be for our instructional frameworks. We have strong PLCs. We are observed often for our like UBD work or our MTSS work, which is fantastic. But even if you have all these systems in place, I think what we realized as we were talking a little bit last year and over the summer is, how do teachers, like, you can be an amazing teacher, right? And you can stand up at the front of the classroom and you can teach all day long. But if students aren't learning, then what is it that we're going to do about it? And so often we talk about how do you shift that cognitive load? That's putting the onus of the learning, the accountability on the student, whether that be the reading, the writing, the math, the accountable math, showing what you know. And we need to do something different, because you can teach your heart out all day long, but how do we convey to teachers, like, what does a cognitive shift look like in the classroom? What does it feel like in the classroom? It means that when any one of us could be observing a classroom and giving feedback, right? And oftentimes we are sitting there and we're evaluating like how teachers are doing. But if we don't take a pause and say, did the whole class get it? And if they did, wonderful. But if they didn't, what are we doing differently about it? Because if we don't do something differently, then what ultimately ends up happening is we just increase the gap for students, and achievement decreases, growth decreases. And so we have to know what to do. But have we articulated for our teachers at this point yet, like, what does that look like and how does it feel? And so if students aren't getting it, what do you do? And so just recently, Mr. James, he offered some professional development around this for our teachers, because this is also, and I'm sure Ms. Gray Fox will add in there too, a little bit about like, how does that pair with the gradual release model? And since we are data driven, Mr. Lusky can definitely share with you a little bit about like coaching some of our math teachers and saying like, what can you do in the classroom when you notice kids aren't getting it? And what are you going to do differently? And so this isn't just a me effort or a me aha moment. It's a, like, our team has realized that this is an issue in our building. And not for everyone, but it's definitely something where as we move the cognitive demand on students and are more interested in what they're learning and how they're learning so we can close those gaps, what are the systems and structures that we need to put in place to ensure that we're offering the PD, that we're having the conversations about gradual release, that we're looking at the data and making shifts in the classroom. And so it's not just one person, it's like our whole team is moving in this direction. So it's a lot of work, and it's just, it's only been a couple months into this work.
How are you finding, I guess, both the students and the staff reacting to that shift? And I'll give a little background. At my school, we're doing the same thing. We're calling it, based on some Harvard research, we're calling it making thinking visible, and really making it a point that when we walk into classrooms, or when the teacher is taking this step back from being like that sage on the stage kind of model, and really putting the onus on students. The question that I started asking first is, well, at the end of the class, who's more tired? Is it you or the student? Because it's the student, it's the thinking, right? For when we know, like, teachers make more decisions in 60 seconds than any other career, I believe, unless the research has changed. And that is exhausting, right? And so I've been asking that question, like, who's more tired at the end of this? Right? Is it you because you've been making all the decisions for everyone in the room, or is it the students because they are doing this? And how do we know? We've got to make it more visible. So I guess going back to that initial question before I spoke too long, which I'm going to do often, what are you seeing? What differences are you seeing in what the students are doing and what the adults are doing?
I'll take this one only because, we've kind of looked at our math practices, and I don't think the audience will have this similar reaction. There's not a heck of a lot out there that will align everybody in mathematical instruction and where we can go. There's a lot of interventions out there, but some have the good, some have the bad. None of them seem to be perfect, right? So we kind of took a step back and looked into data and what kind of data we're looking for. We have qualitative and quantitative, right? And a lot of times in education, we're looking at those quantitative pieces of data, but those numbers aren't telling us the full picture, right? So we know, hey, there needs to be a change, right? And this is coming back to your question. How do we meet those changes? Not well as human beings, right? There's unknown, there's uncomfortability. There is a fear of the process and what it could become. There's fear of the expectations of what it will be. And I think moving slow to move fast is probably my best piece of advice. Chunking things so it's not overwhelming up front. Make it seem like we're not adding to the plate while we're not taking anything away. We're not adding to the plate. We're just adjusting what we're already doing and trying to make sense of it and bring more purpose for our students. And I think it's the same for the kids too, right? Our students, again, what is this change? This is new. This is overwhelming. What's happening? Why is this happening? So going slow for understanding, to seek understanding, to see if this is the way to go, and if we can create something out of not a lot at the moment, right? So it's going to take time. It's going to be a process, and we need to be okay with that process, right? Don't move too fast, too quickly. It's going to become a disaster. But if you take a step back, you reflect, you incorporate feedback, it can become what you want it to become, but it does take time.
I'll add to that. We just did a professional development, well, I shouldn't say we, Mr. James did, with our other assistant principal, Mr. Vanderwalker, who is unable to be with us today. But I'm always curious to say, like, hey, when we offer professional development, a survey came out to begin with and asked our staff, like, what is this? Is this, and we gave them like 10 different options and said, hey, what are you interested in? And this was one of the ones that they were most interested in. And so Mr. James offered the professional development. And then afterwards, I'm also very curious, because I think staff voice is really important, to say, like, how did you think it went? What did you like about it? And so overwhelmingly, the feedback came back like, this was a great professional development, and they're really excited about the next level of work. And so I think it was beneficial for our team, but do you want to talk a little bit about it?
Yeah, I mean, within the professional development, my whole thing was trying to get teachers to understand the importance of, again, shifting the cognitive load to the students, and understanding that there's a lot of information that's readily available for kids. Like, let's think about like Google, ChatGPT. There's so many things that's readily available for kids to access. And we're trying to get them away from that idea that everything's at their hand. We really want them to understand that, hey, we want you to be able to analyze, synthesize, process, and really understand the material. And us as educators, we have to feel comfortable enough to be able to release it to you all in order for you to grow within your academic success and abilities. So within the professional development, that's why we really took a lot of time to just understand where teachers are coming from currently within their instructional practices, and figuring out different strategies and ways to help them incorporate, again, shifting the cognitive load to the students, and also being able to have them feel a little bit more comfortable doing that in their class setting. So like you mentioned, so you won't be so tired and overwhelmed at the end of the day, and having the students be the leaders within the classroom. I always say we're the facilitators. We're the ones that, again, we're guiding the conversations. And within this lesson or particular topic, we're going to introduce it. We're going to get you to where you need to be. And then from there, we want to see how you can blossom and do your thing within this lesson. Teach your peer, again, those peer-to-peer interactions, think, pair, share, different strategies to see how you can really take control of it. And then from there, we're going to ask probing questions. We're going to be the ones that's going to, again, continue to get you to think about it to the point where you truly understand.
You were talking about visible learning just a second ago.
Mhm.
There's a new book out that we just got from our district office. I think you might. I was hoping you had it right there. But it's a really, I mean, I don't know. I'm going to find the title of it, but we just started kind of checking it out. And so one of the things I noticed is, like, you know, a teacher can stand up front at the board all day long, but, you know, when we're looking at, like, and I'm going to go back to that math example. And one of the things that Mr. Lesky's been working on with some of our teachers is, like, how do you know, like, when kids know it or when they don't? And so we talk about, like, what does accountable math look like? And so, you know, hey, you got a whiteboard in front of you, and I've just challenged you to work through a problem with your individual or partner or group. And when you're ready, 1, 2, 3, show me, hold up that whiteboard. And then that teacher needs to take a pause in that second, right? And say, hey, scan the classroom, and you need to look and see, like, can you see pockets of students that are getting it and pockets of students that are not? And if you notice that 20% of your students aren't getting it, what are you going to do differently? If you notice that 50% of your students aren't getting it, does that mean, hey, we need to do some small group work? If you notice 80% of your students aren't getting it, man, we better think about reteaching, because if we just move on, you've lost them. Or they think, hey, you're going too fast, or kids are going to, like I said earlier, increase that skill gap. And oftentimes I'm not sure that teachers know up front, like, if they don't get it, what should I do? Or if only a certain percentage don't get it, is that just an individual check-in? Or, how do we say, I'm going to look at my instruction, and when I realize no one got it, how do I adjust real time? If you're not adjusting the instruction real time and you just keep blazing on through, then we've missed an opportunity with kids. And that's not okay, right? And so we have to give permission for our teachers to also say, yes, we have a curriculum, we have a scope and sequence, we have a pacing guide, but we might need to be flexible in how we present this content. And so again, when we talk about visible learning, we're talking about, yes, maybe think, pair, share, but I want to see your writing. I want to see that whiteboard pop up. I want to see you at, if you're thinking about we use building thinking classrooms, I want to see you at a vertical whiteboard, and I want to see you doing some of that work. And I need to know that you've got the skill. And if not, like, I need to look internally and say, like, how am I going to do this differently? Is this, again, an individual check, a small group? Is this a whole group reteach? Is this going to be something I'm going to spiral in? Is this going to be warm-ups that I review again? Do I need to do my exit ticket differently? Like, what are some of those examples? And so that's the kind of skill set I think I want our teachers to have, so that they can look around the classroom and say, 80% of the kids didn't get it. I got to stop. I got to pause. I got to help these kids because it matters. Because their learning matters, because we got to be more intentional about how we're presenting content in a way that kids are able to absorb and be able to move forward. Otherwise, you can see as we look at data that students maybe in kindergarten are, and I'll speak to our own data in looking at like our scores, like 60% of students are proficient in kindergarten on, kindergarten-based standards. But then when we get to, third grade, that percentage has decreased, and we get to fifth grade, that percentage is decreased, and we get to, eighth grade, the percentage is decreased even more because the skill gap has continued to widen. So we got to do something differently about it.
Makes me think of the quote, if you expect it, pre-correct it. So when you're like planning for instruction, when students don't get it, right, and you're really trying to shift that load for students, well, how does that look in your planning process, right? And really kind of going back to foundations of education and what we do before we're in front of students. So if we anticipate that students don't get it, then what do we do as educators to go ahead and make sure that we have the necessary scaffolds in place to go ahead and help them in that time of need without giving them the answer? And I think that's an important piece of shifting the cognitive load as well.
And I love that because she's talking about the pre-planning, right? And plan for those unexpectednesses, right? Mm-hmm. But what happens when you're in the lesson and you didn't plan for this? And my favorite thing to hear from the student is, I'm confused. And I know that might not be a popular opinion, but that's a jackpot for me, because now I get to ask you what is going on inside of your head. And my favorite answer is, why? Why are you confused? What part are you stuck on? What do you need me to show you? How can I change your thinking? But it all stems to, who should it be asking to discover what's wrong right now? It's not me a lot of the time. It's not our teachers here. They are doing exactly what they're supposed to be. But sometimes we have a student that says, well, I'm confused because this or that. And that changes what we might do in the moment to attack that situation.
That was great. I can just say, like, to kind of go back and go over a few of the things, like Sean, first thing when you were talking about, you got to go slow at first. The statement that was going in my head was, it's a Navy SEAL statement that they say is, slow is steady, steady is fast. So in the way you work, you'll move through. If you continue at a slow pace, continually working, continually growing, it's going to be a faster trajectory of improvement than it would be if you try to go right away to the end. Second, with that, we're hearing Nicole talk about many of the things that you were doing are things that actually we're doing here in the state of Connecticut too. To kind of hear, number one, you talked about gradual release. You're talking about the actual learning with the kids, that I do it first. We're going to do this together, making sure staff are getting it. So as students are getting it, so you're thinking those whiteboards and the 80% going through, and then they're finally having to do it on their own and using UBD, the Universal Design for Learning. Understanding by design is going through, basically understanding, getting the basis of what you want the goal to be, and then working back and creating all those little areas where pitfalls can come into play to make sure it's working. So it's just interesting to hear those pieces and how you're using that for this cognitive shift. And to go back to Leroy with it also, hearing about that shifting over to students and having them have that struggle, them going through, reminds me of kind of what we call the learning pit, is the one thing that we're doing a large portion of our work on right now, is that understanding of getting students in that pit to be confused, to understand, because we know the hardest thing is to get a student to take that initial step into the I don't know. And if we can get them to there, then we can really get them to start learning and start going through. The one question I have based off of that, because it sounds like all those pieces are kind of what you guys have been doing through the data understanding, is how do you build the trust first for staff to believe in what you're doing already? This is that, because staff, we know, one, nobody likes to change. It's hard for change right away when we talk about getting to do something new. Two, you're asking them to possibly fail in front of the class. And as educators, we are all perfectionists. No one wants to fail ever. We can't ever make a mistake, because if we mistake, we feel like the world will end. So we always feel like we can't allow that thing. So almost the way I always kind of put it is a dog on that, like that rope that you can pull and it like retracts back. We're never allowed to give that enough leash. We're kind of always pulling because we don't want to give it too far that we lose it. But then the same time is, how do we build that trust that students feel comfortable enough to feel the struggle and understand that you aren't trying to trap me in a problem. You're trying to help me, to try and get me to have that productive struggle. So I guess my question back to the group on that is, how do you build that trust, both for staff to feel comfortable that with you on this, and then two, for students to start to be it with the staff?
I would say first, we have just an incredible team. And we absolutely believe in distributive leadership. Just because I may sit in the principal role, it means that there are so many different perspectives, so many different levels of expertise. And oftentimes I would tell you that our staff is leading much of the charge in our building. And so things like we've done with UBD, staff-led, with our constructive response work, staff-led, our MTSS processes and systems, staff-led. They're fantastic. And so we have just an environment of, I believe, trust, but I also believe that you have to be able to share with staff the why. And we have to also be uncomfortable disagreeing, because we as a team too, we don't all agree ever. But I would also say, as Mr. James has joined our team, he has admin experience, but he's new to this team this year. I have tried to say, this is like kind of how we do things in our building, but it doesn't always mean it's the right thing. So I want you to be able to challenge us. I want you to be able to challenge the status quo. I want you to be able to tell us, if you have a different idea, call me out on it, because I need to be vulnerable in a principal role. But I would also say that we have to be able to share that with our staff too. And we tell them too. It's actually sometimes a part of our interview process, right? If you felt differently than one of the people on the leadership team, how do you handle that? How do you approach that? We want them to feel comfortable, and we want them to be able to also, though, be data focused and student based in our decisions. And so we've tried to impress upon our team those values. You guys can talk a little bit more about staff and students, because we all work with staff. We all have large teams that we work with. So yeah.
I was going to say that we do have a really unique culture here. I know it takes time to build that sometimes, and a mindset shift can be really challenging, right? How do you instill that within your staff? And that's by building mutual trust and respect, as Nicole was saying. We're very transparent about data, about our students, about our philosophy, our approach to education. And I think that's what brings our team closer together, because we do have that shared vision and shared mission. And so of course that plays right into collective efficacy. So when you talk about a staff that works like a well-oiled machine, moving towards the same goals, that is our staff. And I think that helps teachers and students embrace that vision, embrace those goals moving forward, and it helps us stay focused.
And I can say on the student side, from what I've noticed here, is the culture that's been established. most of our kids want to be challenged. And within this whole cognitive shift and cognitive load being shifted to them, it starts from kindergarten and it goes all the way through 8th grade. They already know what to expect, and they know that it's not going to be an easy task for them in class of like, here's a worksheet, here's the vocabulary words, here's this. Like, no, because they understand that's just busy work. They want to be challenged. And I think with our teachers, again, being all the way in and understanding that, hey, this isn't just going to be an opportunity for me just to talk to them for 45 minutes and have them do an exit ticket and go. Like, no, we're going to put in instructional procedures and also techniques to make sure our students are, again, leading this front when it comes to, again, shifting the cognitive load and having them putting things in place to better see them succeed within the subject matter. So, like, again, we're not just doing worksheets, we're having them actually be the ones that's leading these conversations. They're asking those questions. If they're having difficulties, like Mr. Lusky mentioned, they're able to share that, but we're, again, able to probe more out of them instead of just say, hey, here's the answer, move on to the next thing, because we got to hurry up, because I got to make sure that I fit this all in so I get to the next thing. So again, the students are really challenged here, and they know what to expect from our teachers. And again, all our teachers are completely bought into this. So it's been not necessarily smooth transition, but it's a work in progress each day. But I'm seeing a lot more of the positives than the negatives.
Yeah, just piggyback on that, and just like, don't forget pragmatics and taking a logical approach to change. Like you said it earlier, we don't like change. I said it earlier, we don't like change, but like change is inevitable. And in this profession, and if you look 50 years ago at what education was and what it is now, guess what? Change happened, and that's okay. Being okay and comfortable with the failure doesn't always come up front, but taking those small approaches and being like, hey, does this have to be done tomorrow by 3:45? Or could we take a little bit of extra time on this concept to make sure it's solidified before we move on, right? Now, we can't go super slow and be 14 weeks behind in the curriculum, but there is some fluidity with what we need to do with different populations of different students. So don't forget the logics behind why we do what we do, and don't be overwhelmed with the anxiety of being done right now.
I'll just add one more little quick thing. I think it's really important for our teachers to have like a growth mindset and to also be able to share that with kids. Like, we're all human. Teachers, when they make a mistake, I love that kids can catch it and teachers are like, oh yeah, thanks, that's awesome, right? I love that when we make intentional mistakes too, because error analysis is a very high cognitive piece of learning. And I think that you have to create a space and an environment where it's okay for us to, like you said kind of earlier, like productively struggle. That grappling with that and being able to figure it out actually makes kids feel really proud of, like, wow, I got it, I knew it, I understood it. Like, it took me some time, it was hard to learn, but I got there, right? Having that mindset shift for kids too, and having that growth perspective in your classroom, where it's okay to make mistakes because we're all learning. And I hope that for all of our kids, I hope that for my own children, that as they are learning and growing, that it's okay to make mistakes. And, and I want our staff to know that too, right? We're not perfect, but all of us have great skills to share, but we also have great skills to learn.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I wonder, as I hear you guys talk about this, and you said about kind of the data-driven aspects of it, and you talk about the shifts through the actual classroom and the instruction.
Yeah.
What else shifted? So, like, I'm thinking about I'm guessing your PLCs, or your grade level meetings, your committees you have. Can you explain what you did with those areas to help support this work that was going on in the classroom? Or if you didn't, was it just kind of the shifts all happened through the professional learning that occurred?
No, I think it is because we're all shifting that in all the different areas that we work in. But they are like, they can add so much more to this too.
So it goes back to instructional practices, right? So which is embodied in all of our PLCs when we meet with teachers. I think it really goes back to the instructional model of gradual release.
Yes.
I've recently attended a training with Dr. Anita Archer, Reading in the Rockies. Check it out if you haven't been there before. But it was really great to hear her talk about just how much teachers spend so much time on the I do and then you do portion of gradual release, but we never really spend the dedicated and necessary time on the we do portion of it, which is where truly the productive struggle can happen. So when we're strategically planning for that portion of the lesson, right, we can anticipate the struggle that our students are going to have. We can build in the necessary scaffolds. We can go ahead and ensure that we address any misconceptions that kids have in that portion of the lesson. So I think, as she said, a lot of teachers skip that part or don't spend adequate time on it. And I think that we've done a great job as a school, and our teachers have done a great job of making sure that this is an intricate part of their lesson planning and execution.
Yeah, and I'll just touch on like the data portion of it, right? And we talked about this earlier, quantitative, qualitative, because you can bring me a spreadsheet full of this entire module of fractions, and you can say 42%, 32%, 82%, 56%. And I go, what does that mean? Like, what are they struggling with fractions? Is it numerator? Is it denominator? Is it addition, subtraction, multiplication, division? Is it understanding that a fraction has a value less than 1? And that's just on one concept. The numbers aren't going to tell you that story, but if you bring tangible evidence of students' product, you can look through that and say, oh, yeah, we have a problem with understanding equivalency or the value of fractions, or if they are mixed, or if they are improper, whatever it may be. We need a little bit of qualitative data to look at and see where the misconceptions are happening, or we need to be vulnerable enough to ask questions of our students in real time, being like, where are you stuck? Where can I help? What is needed? Because without that knowledge, we kind of get trapped in this cycle of like, I'm going to show it to you again. We're going to do one together. I'm going to have you try it on your own, but something is missing, and we keep doing this process over and over. So whole class, yeah, we got to do this gradual release process. When you start working with small groups or independent students one-on-one, you start to question a little bit more to figure out more of the puzzle.
So that actually is started answering the question that I was going to ask. So you talked heavily about the use of data. You talked about I'm paraphrasing now, success through failure. And one of my favorite things, I'm paraphrasing again, one of my favorite quotes is, you're confused because you're paying attention, right? And getting away from this idea that a kid is confused because your mind is somewhere else. No, you're confused because you're paying attention, and this is all really new, and we're just like getting into it rather than me trying to front load you with, a 30-minute lesson or a 30-minute, lecture before we get into the real meat and potatoes of the lesson. It sounds like you're saying that the way you assess, and I'm going to use the words formative assessments, but it sounds like the way you assess has changed some. And if it's not formative assessments, then tell me what it is. But what has changed in the way you're asking your teachers to deliver the lesson and build in those moments to check in on what students know so that they can adjust on the fly as need be, and not wait till that end of the lesson exit ticket where you maybe have wasted 45, 60 minutes, and now you'll get to it tomorrow when you could have gotten to it 15 minutes into the lesson.
Yeah. Yeah, she go first, but then I got something too.
Okay.
So
I think that speaks to our structures, right? So like our tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 interventions as well. What are we doing when students aren't learning? Well, if I notice 30 minutes into a lesson, I've done this great delivery of a lesson, and then we're going to go ahead and do practice together of that concept, and then it's that release time, I'm going to informally check. So you talked about formal assessments. We do a lot of informal checks with our students as well. It could be a turn-in talk. It could be a, like how they utilize a sentence frame or whatnot. But really it speaks to like our tier 2 differentiation of instruction and making sure that we're consistently meeting with kids and allowing for time for that to happen in the classroom. So if our data says 20% of our students after teaching this lesson do not have it mastered, what do? I don't keep moving on. I pull a small group with those students, that 20%, and of course I'm going to dig deeper and really create scaffolds and implement scaffolds to ensure that they get to a level of mastery. So it's not just moving on because the lesson sequencer says so, but really being responsive to that informal data in real time to be able to make sure that kids are on track and mastering those skills.
So the other day, Mr. James had a social studies PLC. We have very strong systems. Like we meet on a regular basis for PLC, MTSS, all that kind of stuff. But he had a formal and he couldn't attend. And I know like it's not okay for us to just drop that because there's so much work to do, right? And so I was like, I would love to go, like give me your agenda. And we had a really great discussion around like, our practices are very different between English or science or social studies or math. And we were talking a little bit about like, if you give a end of unit assessment, that's wonderful, but what do? What is the formative checks in between? And are we giving quizzes? Are we doing checks for understanding? Are we doing like little, just like she said earlier, informal assessments? Like how do we know? And someone had brought up, if I'm teaching longitude and latitude, like this is how I move forward if they don't get it. And we had to take a stop and pause and talk a little bit about like, do we wait until the next unit or the next year to teach them that skill? Or do we say, hey, we're going to stop. We're going to do more of these like mini informal and formal assessments because ultimately like it's wonderful. You give your pre-assessment, you give your post, and when you realize that 50% of your class did not do well on the post-assessment at the end of the unit and you just move on, like, what have we done to ensure that they're ready for the next grade level? So we were, honestly talking about it in math too during PLCs. And we believe, or at least I do, and I think most of our team does too, is that these formative assessments are way more important, not end of unit summative assessment, because it's going to help us adjust instruction to meet kids where they are. And so as we have, like you said earlier, like thought about our PLCs and thought about our MTSS and other systems in the building, it's kind of shifted the direction that we're moving, right? Instead of just looking at summative data and thinking, okay, well, this is the standard they struggled on, and then we move on anyways. Like, no, we need to do something more formative assessments to figure out what that standard might be that they're struggling on so that we can do something now so they can be more successful later on. And so our conversations have definitely shifted in that regard. And I think that our hope ultimately is that when we get to those big state assessments, towards the end of the year, like this work is driving change, but more importantly, we're closing the achievement gap for students. And that's what's important. And you want to add anything?
No,
or?
you nailed that. That was like,
I just want to piggyback off what she said because she's not telling you the foundation of what we move forward in instructionally. Like we have an instructional framework that actually has like student feedback on it. And I think that lends itself perfectly into those formative assessments, those quick checks for understanding during the lesson to make sure kids are on track. So if they're not, like, are we giving them feedback in real time to go and say, hey, you know what, that computation problem right there is incorrect and whatnot. Are we stopping to check, give student feedback, which is part of our instructional framework? If we are, then we can catch those errors well before they get to the formative assessment at the end.
So some of our training has also been around like, what types of feedback are you giving to students? Is it effective feedback? Is it driving change? How do we get better at giving students feedback? Because me receiving a 15 out of 20 on a test doesn't tell me anything. But diving into that, I don't know, you want to add to that?
well, I just want to flip it too.
Okay,
like,
go for it. Yeah.
like while we're giving feedback, are we also getting the feedback from our students that we need to give the appropriate feedback. So yeah, thinking about feedback both ways, like it works two ways.
What type of advice would you give to a teacher or a leader that's trying to create this shift? So if I'm a leader, I'm looking to do this now in my own building, from your own trials and tribulations that you've had with this and getting it set, what would be something you would suggest to do for this?
In every part of your educational career, from the beginning till where you're at now, there have always been positives and negatives. And with any systematic change or big change that's coming, there will always be positives and negatives. And if you ground yourself in that reality and take time to remember that daily, you're going to have a better time going through the process.
What about you guys?
I would say just take the process slow. Again, change is hard, but as long as you're willing to learn and adapt and to truly understand the benefits behind it, and for your students in particular, then it will come to you a lot easier, and then you will legit be the facilitator and your kids will then be leading. So just take your time, understand that there's going to be some failures. It's okay to fail, just fail forward. And as you continue to grow within learning how to shift the cognitive load, you will see the successes behind it.
I think consistency is key. You were saying like go slow. Part of that is making sure that you're consistently doing it as well. Any real change that you're trying to implement, whether it's in your classroom, in your building, and beyond, if we do it sporadically, it's never really going to truly make a difference. If we're consistent in what we're doing moving forward, then we're going to go ahead and see that change. So not aborting it as soon as it doesn't work a couple times, right? And dismissing it as ineffective. I think being consistent with it and the consistent implementation of it would definitely be some solid advice for teachers and principals trying to implement this kind of change.
I would say that if you are a teacher and so how do you know when students are getting it? How do you know when they're not? And helping them identify that is part of our job as an administrator, but also helping teachers understand when students aren't getting it, what can I do about it? Like, we have to do something about it. And so you as an administrator, as you're walking through classrooms, as you're, having a presence in your school, you have to be able to identify too, like, are students learning in the classroom? That might just be because you see the visible learning. That might be because you're looking at the data. That might be because you notice that kids are confused, but we keep moving on. Or do we stop and reteach and take a pause and meet kids where they are? And so I would just say, when kids aren't learning, we have to do something.
Those are great words. Is there any sort of resource that would support this work that you felt was like your biggest impact for the work that you did?
I mean, we talked a little bit about the Visible Learning book, the newest edition that came out. I don't know if you guys have anything that you want to add. Yeah.
District trainings, we do like book studies, things like that. I think kind of all-encompassing engagement activities to see if kids are getting it within the moment, right? Yeah, there's a lot.
Ask people. We have a wide amount of experience and talent in this field. Like, it is okay to be vulnerable and ask why. What can I do? This is my idea. Does it sound good? Is it not? Like, can you give me some advice? Ask the questions. Be okay to ask.
I would also add, I really love the book, Building Thinking Classrooms. Like, we model our practices off of that. We want to see kids up and moving. We want to see, yes. We want to see kids up at vertical whiteboards. We want to see them working in groups. We want to see the randomization. We want to see the multiple response strategies. We want to see kids doing the work, because that's how we know they're doing the learning. And so visible learning, building thinking classrooms, those have been my go-tos for the last, several years, but I'm also an avid reader. So I anything I can get my hands on, I like to read because it matters how I drive this building and how we move forward as a campus.
You also go to bed, or not go to bed. You also go home less tired, so you don't go to bed at 4 p.m.
I think I just do that because I'm old. So I just go to bed. I'm not even bother worrying about any parts of that.
So since we're showing the books, this is what we're using. Making thinking visible.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that leads into my question though, because we have not done this yet, and I'm hoping maybe you have and you can give me some insight. As far as like milestones or benchmarks or just timelines, like do you have like mine? What I believe I heard is that you are just at the beginning of this shift. Do you have like built-in benchmarks for this rollout already in place, or are you, when you say like you're taking it slow to go fast, like you really are going at the pace of sort of your staff's tolerance for this movement?
Okay, well, first, the other book that I was going to tell you, so I got the title of it. It's called The Illustrated Guide to Visible Learning. I'll say that again, The Illustrated Guide to Visible Learning. So that's the one book that we've started, and that's very, very recent. And so does anybody want to answer the other part of that question? I'll go if you want. Yeah.
Go ahead.
So I think, again, we're a very structured, system-based building. However, this has just been an early realization. And to be quite honest, we are meeting people where they are right now. He works with several different teams, and one team is like, yes, let's do this work, let's go. And the other team is like, let's do this next year, right? But
But the thing is,
go ahead.
we know that our district is moving forward with our new intervention program next year, right? It might not be something we're wildly sharing, but this is our slow approach to when that rollout does come. There's nothing worse than a brand new directive on day one of education in August at the beginning of the year. So we know this is coming. We're kind of making the changes now slowly so that when the beginning of the year happens and it is a new directive and it is rolled out, we're ready to go. And we've been doing this work for a year now.
So I would say this for an intervention program, but
Yes.
So, but as far as like shifting the cognitive load, like right now we're meeting people where they are, but we do that with everything, right? But eventually we find game changers in our building and they champion the process. And what ends up happening is then it eventually becomes a system or structure. And then towards the beginning of, we'll collect data, we'll look at our systems, we'll think about what that rollout looks like. And then we will do this building wide as a system or structure. And we will talk about what those processes need to look like, but it will then eventually end up on probably, I would think, our instructional framework, if this is work that is shifting the data the way that we would like to see. And so it is a slow process. It takes us a year. They talk about how true change takes like 3 years to make. And it's completely true and it's okay. But I think we all are on board with kind of making these little changes now so that when we say, hey, yeah, this is the work that we're going to do, it becomes a part of our instructional framework and then it becomes a part of our culture. And that culture shift is then what drives, expectations for later on. But again, that's us all challenging and working together right now to say, well, this is working and this is not, and that's okay. And we're going to meet our teams exactly where they are. You want to add?
Well, thank you so much for being on our podcast today. This was a great conversation to hear kind of about the great shifts that you're doing over in your school district, getting an understanding of how you guys started the process, where you're coming from, resources that you're using with it, the work that you've done and the successes you've seen. It was really great to hear that. And also it's always fun, I find, to hear the similarities between districts, between states, because like, you know, we're across the U.S. and to hear that we're all doing the same exact books, the same exact type of materials is just interesting always to hear, because sometimes when you go, you hear about from different school districts who are just like, never heard of that book, never heard of this thing. Like they're trying to look it up themselves. We're all doing something very similar, which is just great to hear.
Yes, I love that.
Any final words you'd like to leave for our audience?
I was just going to say, like, if many people have heard those books before, it kind of speaks to their character, their philosophy, their mindset of always continuously learning and growing and whatnot. Like Nicole was saying, like, she's an avid reader. Her books, of course, are like geared towards math and like administration. And I'm like, okay, I'm reading the Writing Revolution 2.0 right now, you know, finishing it up and everything. But I think that speaks to just kind of like the mindset of teachers and wanting more, not just for themselves, to invest in themselves as the greatest asset in education, like teachers and principals and whatnot, but really investing in kids and making sure that they're equipped and they're at their greatest capacity to give back to kids. So I think that's really awesome that you guys are learning from those books as well. And there's many people that are like-minded in this field.
I would just say that teaching is about teachers, learning is about students.
Well, thank you guys so much for being a part of our podcast today. Again, we always appreciate anyone being on, having a conversation, just sharing what's going right in education and just getting a chance to hear different perspectives, different ideas. You know, I know Des and I both feel this way. It's just great, and it's always uplifting, especially on the end of a week, to kind of hear from others that are having some successes and seeing how things are going, because it just lets you know, we're doing something right. We're all finding a way. We're all doing something right in the end.
Right.
Des, any final words?
Yeah, just that Nicole started us off with a Horace Mann quote that, I live by. I had a huge smile when you said education is the great equalizer. And I wholeheartedly agree. And I always, in that quote, and add, and we still have some equalizing left to do.
Mm-hmm. True.
Well, again, thank you, everybody. Des, as always, it's great talking with you. With that, school's out.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Know this, you all will be missed. Until then, I gotta blow you a kiss. Until we meet again on that other side, this my rhyme. We all love you to the end of this time, always. Know this, you all will be missed. Until then, I gotta blow you a kiss. Until we meet again on that other side, this my rhyme. We all love you to the end of this time, always.